Hi everyone, thanks for joining us tonight for VisualForce, our final meeting of 2014. I'm Matthew Bodas, one of your three organizers, along with Kirk and Ami. So if you have ideas or suggestions or stuff you want to present, please do let us know. Got a few announcements, a few plugs for other activities, and then we'll get into our main presentation. So hopefully you found us all on VisualForce's Meetup. We've got over 600 members, which is a big boost, so thanks for telling all your friends and coworkers. This is the best place to find out what's going on with future meetings. We also have a Twitter where we post some things. And we have a YouTube, so there's some up there. The Cisco call center CTI integration actually had over 1,000 views when I checked the other day, so people are finding this content. I think Kirk is recording tonight's session for us. There are lots of free goodies on the corner there. So we've got the VisualForce stickers, buttons, business cards, good for your coworkers, good for your kids' Christmas stockings. There's also a fine selection of books up there, both techie books as well as Cult of Mark Benioff books, if you want to find out how he built Salesforce into a $5.4 billion company that's on the way to 10 billion or 20 or whatever he's after. That's a good read. First of our future previews is Ami is organizing our third annual Philly Tech Week conference, tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, April 15th, so mark that on your calendar. And Christian, did you have another announcement to share?
Yeah, the Clicks to Code series is going to be debuting in January 2015 with a Clicks to Code version of the Process Builder. We had a co-working day on Process Builder about, I think, last month, and it was pretty well attended. We had a lot of people interested, and we were able to do kind of a short demo there, but we want to get a little bit more in depth with it and do it in kind of a dedicated setting. So look out on the Meetup site for that date. Like I said, it'll be in January of 2015.
All right, let's do it.
And I'd like to plug something for three of us in the room. We're starting a Girly Geeks chapter in the Philadelphia area. So we just had our planning meeting. Things are still kind of in the works, but it should be starting up in January. There is a LinkedIn group and a Meetup group, and it's the Greater Philadelphia Girly Geeks. So I'd like to see you both there.
There's that one Girly Geeks, and I always want to go, but
well, yeah, the girl develop it. Yeah. This will be like a Salesforce.
Oh.
I think we're talking about kind of flip-flopping locations, city and suburbs, so that we can kind of get to everybody who wants to.
Building chapter, if there was.
Mm-hmm.
There is some other organization though.
Yeah.
It's only one of the Salesforce or Girly Tech, anything?
Well, the Girly Geeks organization is from the Salesforce community. We're not going to be limited to just Salesforce people, but that's what the audience is geared to. So.
All right, thanks. And another big thanks. Tonight's Space and Food is brought to you by our host, Liquid Hub. We've been here a lot, and they keep inviting us back, which is always wonderful. And after the talk, we will try to get out of here so all the Liquid Hub folks can go back home, and we will go down the street to Black Powder Tavern for some more networking and drinks and Salesforce war stories, if you like. So with that, very happy to introduce tonight's speaker. We're going to be talking about Anonymous Apex for advanced admins. And our speaker is Tommy Taylor, local Salesforce Philly figure and MVP. And what are you doing now, Tommy?
I work for Round Corner. So I'll tell you that, and I got an introduction slide.
All right. And if you get hungry during the talk, there's plenty of food and cookies in the kitchen.
So, okay, I think I am gonna sit just because it's easier to type, and we've got somebody on web, at least one person on web conferencing here, and they can hear better if the mic is here. So we're gonna just go ahead and start sharing. And also plug in here and extend my desktop. All right. How's that look resolution-wise? Do you see everything on the screen? Okay. So I have a few slides to go through here. Not too many. So yeah, I'm Thomas Taylor. I'm a senior support engineer with Round Corner. We have two main products. We're an ISV that works in cooperation with the Salesforce Foundation. So we have a product called NGO Connect, which is for fundraising organizations, and we have another product called Foundation Connect, which is for grant-making organizations. I have a few certifications, and I'm a Salesforce MVP. I'm not a certified developer. Those of you who are here who are coders, I apologize in advance. We're going to be bored. This is basic stuff for you. You can go ahead and open up Facebook or Stacking Space or whatever you want to do, and then come to the black powder after. So a couple of things mentioned in the invitation that people should probably set up dev words if you want to be playing with any of this stuff that we're going to be looking at here. Certainly you don't want to be doing it in your work production org, because if you do something wrong, it can be pretty irreparable. As with any Salesforce org, you want to be keeping your backup exports, and I'll be going over how to limit your queries so you only are working with a couple of records, a small number of records at once before you do larger data sets. Remember, the recycle bin can only do so much for you. And we'll actually talk a little bit about the recycle bin. So a favor that I want to ask that's only very tangentially related to what I'm talking about is I have an idea on the Salesforce ideal exchange that was trending for a little while, but it's stalled out now at 1,100 points. If we get it up to 2,500, that means that a product manager has to comment. Today, if you use it, so the apps that my company builds in particular use a lot of custom settings, which in a lot of ways are treated like data, but they don't come out in your data export. So I'm lobbying for people to include the custom settings records in their data export so that you don't lose your custom settings. And also it would make life a lot easier for migrating them because they also don't get copied in a sandbox refresh. So sort of a double-edged sword there. So here's I made a little presentation. There we go. So I made a little shortened link there if you want to copy it down and vote for that later. Okay, so Anonymous Apex. What can we do with Anonymous Apex? Anonymous Apex is basically running Apex code from a console, right? So you're using Apex as a scripting language to usually to manipulate the data in your Salesforce database. It's called Anonymous I don't fully understand why it's called anonymous, because changes to records that you make are attributed to whatever user you're logged in as. So it's, but you're not in any other user's context. And so one of the things that I like about Anonymous Apex is that it's a great way to sort of, if you are an admin who wants to start learning about code, is that it's a great way to start learning some of the features of SOQL and Apex without having to deal with test classes, without having to learn the full syntax of classes that Apex requires. And so here I really need to give credit to Ami and Kirk, who were the ones who initially taught me about this idea when I had the good fortune to be working with them, and sort of set my still early days admin to developer journey in motion. So where can we, how do we use this tool, right? So there's a few ways that we can go and do this, and when I actually get to the live demo, I'm just going to use one of them, but just so everybody knows. So the first thing you can use is the developer console. Have people here used, people here familiar with the developer console for other purposes? No, forward. Right, so the developer console is there under your name. It gives you, it has a variety of functions that you can use besides running Anonymous Apex. You can build queries. One thing that I often do if I'm using the developer console is I'll build my query in the query editor, and then I'll copy it into whatever. And then once I've got the query right and I know I'm working with the right set of records, then I can copy that query into whatever block of Apex that I'm working on that I want to use to manipulate them. Right, so it's right there under your name when you're logged in. So the other tool that I'm gonna use tonight, just because I like how it works a little bit better, is Workbench. Workbench is a great tool if you're not familiar with it. So you can theoretically download it and install it, but everybody I know runs it off of the provided VisualForce server. You log in through OAuth, and it gives you a bunch of ways to manipulate your Salesforce data and metadata. And among them is, you can see here under the utilities menu, we've got the Apex execute option. So a couple of other ways that we can use Anonymous Apex that I'm not going to demonstrate, but if you are, that you can investigate on your own, are if you're using or learning an integrated development environment tool like the Force.com Eclipse IDE or Maiden's. There you have ways that you can just run Apex directly from your development environment. And then if for some reason you had a need to automate or script some kind of anonymous Apex script that you had, or if you're just sort of interested in learning about all the tools that there are, the Force.com CLI, which gives you a command line interface on Linux, Mac, or Windows, will, among other things, let you pass in a file with Apex code in it, and it will run it. You can also create fields. It's a nifty little tool. Okay, so I'm going to cover just a few use cases here, and then I'm going to go pretty slowly here just to so that people can work along if they want to, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So just one thing open. So the other place you want to go, the other browser you want to open github.com, it's probably easiest to just stop the typing after TET3, and then you can drill down here into the DF14 anonymous Apex. Sorry, so you go into GitHub. Oh, sorry. I didn't turn my... But now why don't I extend it? My mouse cursor is waiting for me. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so github.com/TET3 will get you here. And then you can just drill down into the DF14 anonymous Apex section. Yes, I gave some of this content before. So the first one I'm going to look at here is it's actually the most complex, but it gets us started and gives me a chance to sort of go through all of what we're going to be using here as tools from the Apex language. So we start out here, and so this is a little script that will create for us some test data. So it's going to create some accounts, and it's going to create some contacts. So what we're doing, should I zoom in here? Is that a little bit, that help people see better? Okay. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm declaring two lists. Lists are a way of it's a list of records. When we first declare them like this, they're empty. They don't have anything in here. What I'm saying here, I'm creating a list of account objects. I'm giving it the name accounts. And so once I've said that I'm doing that, then I need to specify that it's a new list of accounts. Then I do the same thing to create a list of contacts. So what we're going to do is, as we create our accounts and our contacts, we're going to put these into our list, and then at the end, after we've created our list of accounts and contacts, only once we've got them all in the list are we going to commit them to the database. Because we're in a shared environment, and that's the most efficient way to do it from the Salesforce perspective, is to commit. We're going to only write to the database once, rather than create a record, write it to the database, create a record, write it to the database. So the next thing I've got here is what we call a for loop. Is what we call a for loop. So we're going to do something over and over again. It's another very important data structure, not really a data structure, but a language structure that we use in Apex. And so what I'm doing in these parentheses is I'm saying, how are we going to count? We're going to count by using an integer called I that starts at 0 and goes to 10. And this plus plus means that it increments by 1 each time through. And I'm going to use this this integer I not only for keeping track of how many times I've gone through the loop, but to also provide some small amount of differentiation in the accounts and contacts that I create. Because the next thing I'm doing is that I'm taking I and basically converting it from a number to a character that can be used as a string. Right? The difference, just like if you were building a number field can only have numbers in it. A text field can have letters or numbers in it, but the numbers aren't treated as numbers once they're in a text field. So then each time through this loop, I am creating a new account, and as I create the new account, I'm saying what the values of certain fields are. So I'm going to call it. So I'm calling it Acme space, and then I'm using this string. So this will make it so that the first account is called Acme 0, the next one is called Acme 1, Acme 2, so on and so forth. I'm doing the same thing here. I'm putting them on different blocks of Main Street, if you will. So 089 Main Street doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but all the right, so there'll be 189 Main Street, 289 Main Street, and so forth. All of them are here in Philadelphia. We're going to increment their postal code. We're going to give them different postal codes. And then we're using, just again, to illustrate things now, because number of employees is a number field, right? Here I can use just plain old I because I want a number. Giving them a fake phone number. So we declare all those fields, and then we are adding them. So here in the loop, I'm calling the account A, and then once I've created A, I add A to my list of accounts that I created up here. And then I use this insert command to stick them all in. So that commits the accounts to the database. So here's another for loop. I'm doing similar things here, but I'm using a different kind of for loop. Rather than counting, I'm saying here's my list of accounts, and I want you to go through it. I want you to go through each one, and as we're going through each one, we'll call it ACCT. So as we're going through each one, I want you to I want you to do something to each of those records in that list. And then inside of that, I'm doing another for loop. So what this ultimately is doing is creating 10 contacts for each of my 10 accounts, right? Because for each account we go through this loop 10 times, and then for each of and then we're going to go through that. So it's going to create 100 contacts, and we're doing some. The only other thing of interest that we're doing here is this is what we call a ternary operator. It's a little if statement. So I'm basically saying I'm alternating the traditional gender of these two names by saying by asking whether we're on an odd or an even loop of our counter. So that's the walk through this code. So now what we can do is we can that doesn't work. So I'll take all this code, take it over to Workbench, and just refresh to make sure I'm logged in. Good thing I did that before I pasted. Okay, so I pasted my code in here. I can, I've got a couple of different, I can say I can say what level of debugging I want here. Actually, let me just do one thing. So now I can execute my code. Workbench is going to send my code over to my developer instance. Oh, and of course it failed. Oh, because I think it's in a different order. Sorry about that. All right, let's try it again. All right. So now Workbench is going to show us what it sent, and then it's going to give us the log here of all the work that it did. And you can see here, by the way, that if you've got other triggers or code running in your organization based on, right, when you create a record through code, it's just the same as if you were entering it through the user interface. Any triggers that are on that object are still going to run. So now we can go to our here are my new Acme organizations. And here are all my John and Jane Smiths. They go on and on for a while. So that's creating records. So the next, any questions there about creating records? Yeah.
I'm not really good. How did it know to get the Salesforce ID that you inserted the account records and pass that back to the contact number? I mean, I saw where you referenced the account ID, but how did it know?
So right, so that's sort of right. So this is where it's sort of this is just sort of one of the nice thing about Apex, right? So basically, what happens here, right? When I insert my accounts, I still have my list of accounts here in the memory, but now that they've been inserted into the database, they're real records and they have IDs. And just by virtue of that fact that they've been inserted into the database, I now have access to the ID of those records that I created. I wouldn't have, I'll get to in a second. Yeah, it's just sort of like a benefit of the way the language is written more than anything else. Yeah, no, that's a good point, right? Because we're going through and we're assigning the account for each of these. Any other questions about the creation script here?
Well, so you created the account and then all the accounts, and then you went back and created all the contacts on
Yes.
the account. Rather than creating an account and 10 contacts, you created another 10 contacts. Is that any reason for that?
Well, so I think it actually goes
To that question, yeah.
exactly to that question, right? So once we commit them to the database, then we can associate the records. I think we could. I haven't honestly tried it, but yeah, that's my reasoning behind it.
I mean, this seems a lot easier.
Right. Yeah, I sort of misspoke at the beginning. Right. We did 2 inserts, right? We inserted 10 accounts in one go, and then we inserted 100 contacts in another go. So the next thing I wanted to show is modifying records, right? And this is a really handy tool. This is probably what I use Anonymous Apex for more than anything. Like and there's all kinds of use cases, right? So you built a new workflow, but you need some way to make it run on a whole bunch of records. So how do you go through and edit a whole bunch of records? Well, one way you might do it is, suck it out with data loader, add a column, suck it back in. With Anonymous Apex, we can do this much, much more quickly. So, right, and the other thing demo for here today, but is you can also use this type of technique. You can sort of combine the creating scripts and this updating scripts if you need to copy an object from one type to another, or copy some data from one set of objects to a corresponding set of objects. But anyway, let me walk through this script, and I think you'll see what I'm talking about. This is pretty straightforward. So we're creating a list, right? Same as we did before. Here's a list of accounts, but now instead of just creating a blank list, we're going to use SOQL to query some existing records into our list so that then we can work with them, right? We're going to pull these records out of the database into memory, and then we can manipulate them how we want, and then we're going to push them back into the database. So I'm going to pull out the ID, and I'm going to pull out the billing state, which I had humorously inserted as yo, or I think it's mildly humorous. You can disagree with that. Right, so I'm going to pull that billing state out from all the account records where that billing state is yo. Right, so when we looked here at my list of accounts, right, so this wasn't a completely empty organization. This wasn't a completely empty org before, right? I had some other stuff. I had some other test data. This is the dev org I've been using for 7 or 8 years. All kinds of junk in here. So right, so I've got some that have full state names, right? I'm only going to be pulling out these ones that have yo by virtue of this where clause. So this is a very basic SOQL query. And the important thing to note about the SOQL query when we're using it with Apex is I'm only going to be able to manipulate fields that I name here, right? So if I select ID and billing state into my query, but then I want to come down here and I can't edit right here. If I tried to say shipping state right here, it's going to say, sorry, you don't have shipping date in your list, right? So it's only creating a list of
Sort of. You can set it to a fixed value. You can say a.shipping state equals pa.respond. If you try to say a.billing state equals a.shipping state, then you get your error.
Okay.
But you can set it without referencing it in the SOQL statement. You
Okay.
just can't reference it to try and retrieve the value.
Got it.
That's the only difference.
Okay. Right, so we can, okay, so we don't have, we can change other fields, but if we wanted to use them, use the contents of those fields.
Then you have to include.
Okay, thank you, Michael. It's always good when the presenter learns something too.
So say that again. You can change other fields even if they're not referenced.
You just can't try and choose a value if you didn't actually do it.
Say city, it's the left-hand side of the table versus the right.
You can't set one
Okay.
field.
Say
equal to
something
500.
equals ADOT city, you can only get ADOT state.
Okay. Okay.
Right, I'll show you an example when I copy this over. Here, let me go ahead and copy this over to
So we can use get.
Workbench. Right, and there are ways once you dive into it to work around even that limitation. So what Michael was saying is, if I was trying to go through and copy my shipping states into my billing states, but the query I had created only has the billing state in it, I won't be able to do this.
But you could say A dot shipping state equals PA.
Right.
Okay.
So my note here, so DML is short for data manipulation language. Yeah. Right, which is those insert, update, delete functions, right? That's when we're actually manipulating the data. So, and that's right. So here I'm again pointing. So when you hear somebody say, "Do your DML outside of any loops," they're talking about, build the list, do what you want to all the records in the list, and then move that list in or out of the database. Right, so we send this off here, and now if I refresh my view, we move them all to PA.
So there's, when you do this kind of things, you have to also be worried about the size of the data. A lot of times,
Yeah.
when you're doing kind of conversions like that, you end up retrieving more than 10,000 rows, which ends up in an exception. So you have to do a limit, and then you can maybe add like a temporary field with a checkbox and kind of say, on the big the ones that don't have a checkbox, and when you change the record, you also put a checkbox to check that field, and then you run it several times.
Right. So that was the next thing I was going to. So when I was talking about sort of ways that you want to, that you want to protect your data and be careful, there's another clause that we can add to our SOQL query called limit. So, and we're just going to, and so we say limit, and we're just going to say a number of rows, right? So I'm going to start here with a limit of 1. And what I did over here was I changed a couple of these PAs back to one. I changed 2 records manually from PA back to Wyoming. So I'm going to change this to WY. Right. So limit 1. I don't have, unless I also get into giving a sort order. I don't have any control over which of those two records it's going to be. I'm just saying, you know, only pull one record into this list. So this is a good way, right? So now we can, so if you're doing something more complex, right, where you're manipulating a lot of fields or you're trying, right, this is a way that you can try it on just one record, make sure that it really does what you're expecting it to before you do too many. And then Ami made a very good point. So basically, I think it's basically a truism to say that anonymous apex is sort of starts to lose its value as your data volumes grow to some extent, right? Because
it's very destructive. That's the biggest problem.
What?
It's very destructive. You
Right.
do a lot of damage when you like one click.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I mean, to some extent, and then you hit limits.
Right. So it used to be, right.
You just click several times.
Right. So it used to be that you had that we had a limit on a number of statements that we could run at one time in Apex. Now it's the case that it's done based on CPU time, which is a little bit more. On the one hand, it's more generous, but it's also a little bit more nebulous. So I would say, as a general, and you do still have you have row limits for how many rows you can query at one time with SOQL. I typically, if I'm working with a lot of records, keep my batches to 10,000 at most. You know, at that point, it's that's a useful number of records when you've got a lot, but it's, unless you're doing something really complicated, it's low enough that it's very unlikely that you would hit the Apex CPU limit. And then right, and so then what you do is then so in this case, I don't need to do anything else because as I go through here and change my billing state from one thing to another, the records that I've changed aren't going to meet the query anymore. But if you are modifying if you need to modify records in batches, right, and we're basically just going to, right, so I would run this. I just keep doing it until I get an error that says, oh, sorry, no more records. But if your query is initially such that the records that you've changed are still going to meet the conditions of the query, then you have to. That's not going to work because you're not going to make any progress with subsequent runs, and that's where you might do something, like just create a checkbox, and then as we go through, I'm just going to add right? So I don't actually have a field called checkbox. I'm not going to run this right now. I'm just demonstrating the principle. So if we created a new checkbox that starts out as blank on every record, then as we go through, we're going to select the records where that checkbox is blank. And then as we're going through, we flip that switch, and then that's how we make sure that we're not reprocessing records as we execute our script multiple times to get through all the records that we need to modify.
So in this case, you're actually changing WY to EA. So you actually can find the checkbox.
Right.
Checkbox is.
You weren't listening 5 minutes ago. I said that right before I went, I said that right before I talked about the checkbox. Okay, so that's updating records. Right, so the last two, these are, these are really simple, and really dangerous, right? So, my tabs are never got, right? So, right, so here, so I'm only selecting the ID field. I could select any field from, any field. I just need to get a list of accounts saying, basically, I'm going to delete all the accounts that I created today, right? So today, as just like we can use it in a formula or in report building, we have today and some other date literals that we can use in SOQL queries. I'm limiting myself to 10,000. I haven't actually been that busy today, so this is going to delete everything that I've created today. We can make it a little bit narrower. We're just going to delete one record. So, right. So this is what So this is where you need to do bulk deletion of something. You might do some more creative filter than just today, or for instance, so in the application that we use, round cause/NGO Connect, we have a sort of a staging table, right? So people bring in, when they import a whole bunch of donations, and it's a big wide table that's got the person, the account, the contact, the amount, and then we process those records, and it matches and copies and puts a bunch of stuff into the main database. But then we just have these sort of leftover records sitting there. So a script like this could let you, right? So maybe you want to delete everything from a month ago, right? That's more than a month old. That might be a more reasonable use of this.
If you're creating more records for testing in a sandbox,
right?
That's useful.
Yeah. Right. And again, where multiple records meet this criterion, we don't have any control over which single record actually gets picked out. Let's see if we can.
I want to see if the system of bugs is record kicked out.
Oh yeah. Good call. So what we can
sort to have some control.
Yep.
But if you're doing a random like this, you want to know which one? That's in the bug.
That's the so that's the last thing I want, or one of the last things I want to talk about here. So system debug.
All right, this may be a stupid question. How important is the spacing between things?
None.
So
Not
it
at all.
doesn't matter. You can
Yeah.
have spaces, you don't have to have spaces, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, spacing is,
But I just wanted,
It's-
because some things are real picky about.
there's no meaning to white space at all. right? You could, it's strictly about making it readable for you when you're working on it.
Okay.
Or, when you're.
When you work with other people on the same organization, it's really good to study them.
Yes, thank you.
You can get away without the brackets, 0. This is going to be all the records that are selected. So if you have limit 10, then you get all 10.
Right. Yep. So what I did here is with this what this bracket 0 does is it pulls up the list is counted starting from 0, right? So if I have a list of 10, we say that they have an index of 0 to 9, right? So when I say, so if I have a limit of 1, I only have 1 record. The output would be slightly different, I think, if I put, because here I'm specifically calling out a single record, whereas if I take this away, it's gonna show me the whole list, and it'll have the structure of the list beyond it. So let's run it, and then I'll show you where you see these debug statements. Oh, thank you. So you get this user debug statement. All we pulled out was the ID.
What trick did I use? You put \n in the beginning of the string. You'll put the debug statement on the second line so you can show up in the name.
Inside the quotes or no?
Inside the quote, \n.
Cool.
Now it's on its own separate line.
That's an old time.
I'm calling you an old timer?
Thank you. Same book.
Does that mean new line?
That means new line. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I'll just show you real quick. If we do this in the dev console, what happens is you'll get, and this is one potential advantage of doing it in the dev console rather than doing it in Workbench, is because you get a filterable log out of it. So here in the dev console, we open up the debug menu and we open up execute anonymous, paste our code in. You have to make sure that this open log is checked in order for what I'm trying to show to happen. And then we hit execute. So that gives us, so then here in the log, we can got just a checkbox to show us just the debug statements. So we can go through, so we can verify our debug statements.
If you don't click on that one, you go to the log.
Yeah, and since we're in the dev console, right, what happens when you have the dev console open? Anything that you do in the application is going to generate a log, and then you can look at that. You can look at that log right in the dev console. And that's going a little bit astray from what I said I was going to mention. So the last piece I'll show you besides delete, and then we can have more questions, is undelete. And here we are, we're sort of skipping some of the steps that that we've been going through before. Right, so this sort of goes to, so right, there's often more than one way to do things. So we're not creating a list variable, right? We're not creating a list variable. We're just using these brackets to create a SOQL query, and that sort of behind the scenes creates a list and passes it to the undelete command. We could do this just the way we had been doing all those other ones with, creating a variable and querying the variable and then undelete the variable. I just wanted to show you another way to go about it. So, but there's two things that are special. Well, the deleted equals true, right? So that's a field that you don't normally see. That's a system field. But then this clause, right? If I did deleted equals true without that all rows, it's not going to do anything, because by default, a SOQL query only queries against your undeleted records. What all rows does is you're now querying against both deleted and undeleted records. Now, yeah. So if you've got, right, so if you're using it for activities that have been archived, are there other objects that are archived automatically by the Salesforce? Right. So that's also how you could call out and modify archived activity records. So this is this says this is the way it is because my co-presenter at Dreamforce was telling a story about where he had actually he had run a delete query that did not exactly the right thing, and somebody came in the next morning and said, "Where's all my data?" Fortunately, it was few enough records and soon enough that he was able to run this command, last modified. So his name is Mark Passavoy. Incidentally, we're using another SOQL. Right, we're not doing equals. We're using these parentheses. Basically, are saying where the name of the last modified user includes. Right, so these are essentially these parentheses signs are wildcards. Right, where you might use an asterisk in other search with other search tools. They're using parentheses. Sorry, percentage signs. So if I run this, I'll change it to actually be my last name. Right, because every time you modify a record, it creates a lookup to a user record.
Is that just delete undelete the account because it would be a cascading delete of all the contacts?
Right. No, it's only that it's the same as a regular removal from. Oh. Yeah, that's it.
That's modified by. Oh, is deleted?
It says deleted, it says archive.
There you go.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, Mark. I'll blame that one on Mark. He's the one that committed that one to the recon. I'll fix that So now when we come back to our account view, we've got all 10 of our. So that's a quick run through Anonymous Apex as an admin tool. People have additional questions or scenarios that they might want to try out. Yeah.
You guys are really careful about your next step, because if you
Yeah.
work for the fires off emails, people will does things based on updates, and you're not cognizant of what you're doing. You could accidentally go to somebody's inbox or do something, do something.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask you, but unbelief is sort of treated as a
No, undeleted is separate.
Okay, you know you do, if there's a scheduled job, and I want to run it off the schedule, and we do, let's just do it on the plan, and that's a scheduled job. Good for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we use that a lot with our application. So, right, so what you can, right, you have access when you classes and functions that are in your org, right? So if there's a, right, so we have a bunch of instructions that we give our users about how to go and, we say, okay, you need to run, we give it very simple, right? Go and open this window, paste this line in and run it, and that will let you run, a batch job or kick off a scheduled job. You can kick off a scheduled job with from Anonymous Apex with more granularity than you can with the regular Apex scheduling from the UI, right? Because I don't know if I have any schedulable classes in this org right now, but normally you would come to your Apex classes and you click Schedule Apex, and you can also, like, when you've got limited parameters here for scheduling. If you've got a job that you need to schedule to run every hour or every 15 minutes, then you can kick it off with from Anonymous Apex with different parameters that will make it run.
Well, I know that was in the queue, not me. So it's, you put in a schedule, it's just going to be scheduled within approximate time, so
Right.
you do it, but not. That's what you do.
Well, thanks a lot, Tommy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with all of you paying attention, because now Tommy gets to ask some questions. If you get it right, we have a few Heroku t-shirts in here for you. I think we just have meetings. But usual trivia rules, raise your hand and we'll see who has the answer. You have some trivia questions for us? Or questions about your presentation?
So, what are the four, I didn't list them out this way, but we talked about 4 different DML types of DML. Name one of the types of DML.
One of 4 database operations.
Insert.
Yep, that sounds good.
You took us there, even without a hand. Michael, I think you had the first hand. We have plenty of shirts, so you want to call another
one? Let's see. What is a place that you can run anonymous Apex from?
Maybe.
Maven's Made, okay.
Folks know what Maven's Made is? Would that be the next trivia question? Or should we just explain it? Or should we let one of the Mavens explain it?
Right, so that's the IDE that you can use instead of the Force.com IDE. All the hip programmers seem to prefer.
All right, we have one more trivia question. Oh, I can ask one.
Yeah, why don't you ask one?
So Tommy showed a few kind of useful community tools in his demo. So if you can raise your hand and name 2 of them. Things that were used in the demo.
GitHub and Success.
Right on, yeah. Success community, yeah. Do you want to show your idea up there?
Sure.
I don't think it's good. I like it.
Sure. Good. You're talking stuff. One less Tommy has to carry home. All right, well, thanks everyone for coming. We've got maybe 10 or 15 minutes for networking or other Q&A. And then anyone that wants to can head down the street to Black Powder Tavern. And stay tuned to Meetup for announcements of January and February meetings. Thanks,
You
everybody.
don't have dates yet, though, right?
No dates yet for
Could you
January.
tell people to mark their calendars for April?
Yes, and mark the calendars for April.
I've